All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stu and the Nun, episode 356. And as you see, two familiar faces, one really familiar, one you have not seen in a while. And he was, we were all a lot younger. But you see the nuns with me tonight. Got Toby coming in from the very southern studio in Cabo San Lucas. And our old friend, what does call him, Cappy? Chris Capiludo. That's close enough, right? You've been called worse.
Sometimes I have trouble pronouncing it. It's like a full Italian sentence, Capiludo.
Yes, it's a lot. But Chris, Cappy, good to have you back. We last had you in April of 2020. You were coming to us from New York City, the heart of COVID, but we were like in the middle of the 2 weeks down, stand down we had to do for COVID. That's all we had to get through was that 2 weeks back then. So I think
they told us that it was once we did those 2 weeks, we'd be good to go and it would be over. And I guess it didn't quite turn out that way.
No. And I'm going to throw
I remember actually I had to go back to, look at that baby face.
Oh, geez.
Still in the same order. Look at I had a lot less gray. Toby still looks the same. And
handsome as ever.
And Cap, same thing, man. You just got the beard on now, but maybe a few more gray hairs.
A little bit, I think.
5 years ago this month, episode 199. And
memories, good times.
Here we got it going on there, back in the same order. But
I remember I ran down to there was a pier in Lower Manhattan where it was like a naval ship was coming in, this big medic naval ship that they were bringing into pier somewhere on like the Upper West Side, and they were basically, it was for like overflow because they were worried that there was going to be so many people in the hospitals that it was going to fill up each hospital in Manhattan. And so they brought in like extra Marines, Navy. It was a ton of military personnel. So it was right around when I was talking to you guys. I ran all the way down there I was like, I'm going to break the quarantine, try to get the story. Turned out not being a great story, but those were the days.
Well, it actually turned out to be quite the story. Quite the story that got spun.
It was in the news for a while, I remember.
Yeah.
I do seem to remember COVID being quite talked about a lot.
Yeah. It seemed like it was a thing.
I don't think we're done with it yet. Like talking.
Yeah. Well, we're never done with that.
We're
in like the after action debrief part.
Yeah. We're about to be in the white paper stage.
Fun fact. Anthony Fauci's wife, who still worked for NIH, was fired today. She apparently her term of service was no longer needed. I can't believe it took this long, but yeah, she was terminated today from NIH. So how things have changed.
She'll land on her feet.
I think it'll be okay. Yeah.
Her husband got quite the handful of bonuses. So
yeah.
I think they'll be all right. They're not as good as the Pelosi's, but I'm pretty sure the Fauci's are doing just fine.
Or the Clintons, but they'll
no one's on that level. Like no, I mean, well, Putin, but like it takes a lot of work to get to that level, Like,
but Putin, he's been up to a lot since the last time we talked. He has been buck wild.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that because you've kind of been there on the front line, friend. Yeah. Speaking of which, real quick, tying the Clintons and then probably the only person that's killed more people than Hillary's been Anthony. So we'll just leave it at that, depending on how you look at it. But Cap, yeah, you were at Task and Purpose back then. We talked to you about that. People go back and watch that one, and you've been with them for a while, and now you're moving on to bigger and better things, when I understand.
That's right. Leaving Task and Purpose. It's official. I am moving on to start my own YouTube channel at Cappy Army. We're going to be launching in the next week, and I'm very excited about it. The launch video is going to have all the details on like why I left and what we're going to be bringing you the same type of geopolitics and defense rundowns that people have come to expect and really enjoy from us and the team that is coming with me. So I'm very excited about it. And yeah, I just can't wait to show everybody what we're cooking up. Like already we're putting a lot of work into trying to do some work on the studio and
you got some backdrop staff going there. I mean, it's definitely came up a notch in 5 years.
The idea is we're trying to invest back into the show, back into the content, and trying to up level it. So yeah, it's like I wish I could share it all right now.
So you said you have a production team? Do you have a Rob kind of guy like we do?
When my team heard that I was leaving, they decided to see if they could help out, and just an incredible group of, it's so many people support what I do, like video editors and researchers, that it's the only way I'm able to pump out like 2 episodes a week they're basically mini documentaries. And like Mike Michaelides is just an amazing creative producer and video editor that I've been working with for years. So yeah, it's I'm very lucky to be working with such talented people.
I think, one, congratulations. And 2, I think this is indicative of the landscape of journalism, really. I think we can no longer. Joe Rogan, he was onto something. I mean, Tom Green was really onto something, but Joe Rogan kind of that you don't own me thing, and now that's how we're going to get accuracy. Like that's how we're going to get integrity, and it's really exciting, to see people starting out and like getting into it, because like when you get into that big corporate thing, we lose integrity, we lose honesty, we lose accuracy for sure. And like I don't want to get my news from the news anymore, because there's no faith, there's no trust. And seeing people, like Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Sage Steele, like seeing these wonderful people going out on their own. And now you, Chris, I love it, because I mean, I'm not going to say anything disparaging about Task and Purpose or any organization. What I'm going to say is, when there's someone that has to answer to somebody in terms of finances, like it makes things murky. And, like some stories don't get covered, or they get a little tint to them. And it's nice to see that lens being removed, like that filter, and just getting down to like, hey, I like you, Chris. I value your opinion. I like your judgment. Show me what you think is going on here. And then having like the quality behind it, right? Like, and Task and Purpose had some really good quality. So like, it's some of the same folks, man. I'm like really pumped for you.
Thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, at working for like any corporation, right, the situation is going to be compromises here and there that you're going to have to make. Task and Purpose gave me every opportunity I have. Super grateful for that. Like you said, when you're in control 100%, you're going to have your vision fulfilled even more. Fortunately, I had a complete creative control as far as what I said or what I uploaded, and never felt any pressure as far as that. But there's some other things that I'll be getting into in the launch video about reasons why, big companies, there's certain incentives and motivations and ability to control your team that you just can only do when you really own the thing. And then I'm looking out, I'm like, okay, what's the next 5-6 years of my life really going to look like? And do I want to be building someone else's house for another 6 years, or maybe I want to build my own house? And these were some of the decisions and things I was considering when I made the decision to leave.
I want to use was it the Daily Wire?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it kind of, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And you see, you know, them going down doing like cool stuff, and then, you know, now you have like a difference of opinion with some folks. And Candace, right? Candace Owens broke away from there, and I'm looking at some of the stuff that she's doing right now, and like, man, that got some cojones, you know, like. I love it. I love seeing this because, you know, we've been, you know, we just joked about COVID, right? You know, we've been just spoon fed bullshit for like a minute. So it's nice, like, well, we can choose. We can separate the peas and the carrots on our plate and consume what we want, consume what we think is important, and discard the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that, Chris, is that what you're hoping with this new channel? I mean, you spent, I don't know how long when you can cover that. You know, you went to the front lines in Ukraine. You did a lot of footage and clips from there. Are you looking to kind of put some of that into that and maybe show some of the stuff you haven't shown already? And are you also looking to do those kind of events again to try to get out there and put yourself at risk to try to get some of that frontline footage and stories?
So I'm planning on doing more on location shooting for sure. I want to cover stories in ways that you can only really do from the ground. I don't know if I'm going to be doing more war frontline stuff again because I got a child coming in July, and I do want to see her grow up. So I'm going to maybe not go to Kursk again, but I do want to go to the southern border and check out what the situation is going on there, what the cartels are up to. I do want to do that. I do want to look at some places in America, like, you know, Ukraine is fascinating. It's very interesting, but there's a lot happening in this country that I think I could shed a light on. And there's drug trafficking routes throughout the United States. They're called like HIDTAs, super high trafficked drug routes that the cartel uses to move their drugs. And like, hey, maybe I could go in person and check some of these out. That is definitely on the docket for sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think some people would consider inner city Baltimore, South Chicago, and a few other places even more dangerous than Ukraine. So maybe there's definitely enough to see there.
Yeah, I said I would go to Ukraine, but I don't think I would go to Mexico. I don't think I would go and try to report from there. It would cut my head off.
Unless you go to Cabo, where Toby is.
Yeah, it depends where you. I mean, really depends where you go
and what you're doing. I mean, like, if I were to be a tourist in Mexico, sure, no problem, or like live there, okay. But if I'm gonna go and like be a foreign reporter, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's anywhere, right? If you look for trouble, you're gonna find it.
True.
You know, like what Daniel Pearl, right?
Yeah,
Like,
good, terrible example. Yeah, good
yeah.
example.
Like, well, I mean, the road to hell's paved, right, with good intentions, and you in search of that story, you know, and trying to get that side of it, you end up talking to the people that, you know, in reality do want to do you harm. They don't care that you're there in an objective manner. They don't care if you're there in the search or the pursuit of truth. You know, you're a valuable asset to them.
So
and not
let's
alive.
talk. Oh, I'm sorry, Toby. You deployed to Iraq before. We talked about this 5 years ago, right? You were in the 56th Stryker Brigade out of Pennsylvania, and you've done combat tour. How was that going into Ukraine? Not armed, not probably some protection on body protection and stuff like that. But how was that? Did you feel a little naked, vulnerable? Like, oh, I have a camera and a phone. That's awesome. It's not going to do me much. I mean, just how was that experience coming from the other side?
Was 1,000% terrifying. It was way scarier than I thought it was going to be. Like, okay, even having a gun there is almost pretty useless. Like, dudes are killing each other with artillery and airstrikes, and you're getting hit by mortars and artillery, rockets. a gun still gives you that like safety blanket feeling of I can protect myself. Like I wish I had had a gun. It at least gives you that false sense of security, and like there's a psychological effect of feeling as though I have some control over my fate. But it was wild not having driving around, for instance, in completely unarmored vehicles, which I guess if you deployed early to Iraq or Afghanistan, probably you're familiar with that. But we would go infiltrate to the positions at the front in a friggin' pickup truck, just a Toyota pickup truck, 4 dudes in there, just flooring it at night with the lights off, and for guy up front's got night vision goggles, and it's like a game of cat and mouse where Russians got drones that are looking for us as there's only really like 1 or 2 roads that go to the front to the positions. So the Russian drones are looking for us. Ukrainian drones are looking for the Russian drones to then tell us if we need to turn back around. There's like basically this zone of about 10 minutes of driving where you have to make it from where you're out of range of artillery and airstrike. Well, not air, but you're out of range of artillery and mortars. Then you've got that you have to run the gauntlet of like 5 minutes of driving. I forget, maybe 10 kilometers. You know, run that gauntlet to the position, get out, get into the basement before they spot you. And the whole time, I can't even understand what anybody's saying because everyone's talking Ukrainian. I'm just pitch black.
Odds on.
Exactly. And all I'm hearing is my fixer every once in a while. He'd say something, he would translate them. And I did not like what I was hearing. Like what he was translating was making it 10 times worse. He's telling me, he's like, oh yeah, the Russian drone spotted us. We got to go hide. I've honestly, like, dude, I was ready to throw up. I wanted them to turn back around and abort the mission. I thought they were going to take us to the front with like EW, electronic warfare devices to, jam the incoming Russian drones. I did not anticipate that we were going to be going all the way to the front. I thought, oh, this is a drone team that I'm with. Like, we'll get within 10 kilometers or so and we'll be good. That mission, that was definitely eye-opening as far as what the Ukrainian soldiers have to deal with just like on a daily basis.
The pucker factor I bet it got more puckered than you thought was possible. And
so tight.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if for a legacy reporter, I think that, the Geraldos would just throw a helmet on and a body armor that really don't understand and have not went through true horrors of war. It's something else. Like you said, you were used to, rolling up in a Stryker, having jammers, having all these air assets and assets to your left and right and everything like that. And you're out there, hoping that dude can rock that 5th gear in that Toyota and that, he's got good nods, and you're just praying that they don't see. I mean, you have nothing but prayer and hoping that that's the only defense mechanism you have. You really have none. It puts a whole new light on someone like yourself that's going up there that has went through combat and then is now in there with full understanding of how quick it could turn. And like you said, you have no control.
I felt like I was an insurgent, basically. It felt kind of like what it probably would have felt like to be an insurgent in Iraq, because I never, for instance, airstrikes. You would hear the air launched missiles, we would hear them going overhead, and it sounded like a low flying jet. And these are things I just never had to consider over there. Like my tour especially I was there in the occupation phase. Like I felt like almost like a police officer during my time in Iraq. And to then go from that to the experience of this near peer war where it's an artillery battle, it's a logistics fight, whoever can bring more to bear, and then also that last mile, the last mile of the logistics, where just seeing the whole way the sausage was made was really eye-opening. Like you said, for us, Kazovac, for instance, casualty evacuations were pretty easy as far as they weren't so contested. Here, if something does go wrong, there's a pretty good chance you're looking at, I think on average, 14 hours before they can get you, because the whole infill and exfil is just lousy with attack drones. So there's no way to get wounded in and out. They're stuck at the front. It's just like realities, things that I, from my perspective, was not used to thinking about.
Yeah, that's. I mean, Toby's went back into some places too, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you felt the same way when you went back into Iraq on a quick little jaunt.
Yeah, no, like, yeah, going back to Iraq during the time of ISIS, probably not the smartest thing I did, but the yeah, no, like when you were talking about, like,
when was that? What was that
uh,
like?
what was that? 2011, 2012, and yeah, no, like we yeah, smuggled somebody in ourselves as well. Yeah, no, we did everything dumb there.
What capacity was that? What were you with the Were you with the United States? Were you with their contracting? Or I'm not familiar.
No, we went in as private citizens to, well, a friend of the show, a great friend of ours. His name is Robert Stokely, Gold Star father. His son passed away, was killed in action in Yusufia in 2008 or 2005.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Right.
And yeah, Michael Stokely, Sergeant Michael Stokely, he was with the Georgia National Guard, and yeah, got killed in late August or mid August of was it 08? No, it was 05,
I think
right?
5, yeah.
Yeah, it was 05. And yeah, he really wanted to see the place, the people, what his son gave his life for. And you know, like, obviously DOD wouldn't do it. The State Department wouldn't do it. No one would do it. He asked myself and a couple other gentlemen if it was possible. You know, and of course the answer is anything's possible. You just got to pay for it. And when I said that, I didn't anticipate necessarily that meant I would be the one. But no, like, it was an honor and a pleasure to do it, but definitely not, I wouldn't advise anyone to do that. And yeah, so going in unarmed till we could get some
essentially
unsponsored, like undocumented, like no, like zero support. Like, if anything happened to us, like, our heads were coming off. They were on a video. There was no QRF. There was no American forces in the country at the time. We were alone. And of course, like, we stand out. And so, like, I totally get it. When you're talking about, like, just driving around in a little Nissan or, like, whatever. Yeah.
And there's also a part of it does feel a little bit freeing. Like, there is a part of it not having that whole entire weight of the U.S. military. It felt almost like being in the Wild West. Felt like, because there's so much structure on a deployment as far as, like, where you're going to be, what you see, what you look at. The thing that really stood out to me, the difference is when you're on deployment and you're on a patrol base, you're on a JSS combat outpost, you don't get to see much of the culture. You don't get to see much of the people or have much of a sense of, you're kind of you're in a bubble, really. But when I was in Ukraine, like, when I was on the front, it's awful. And then when you're off of it, you can go to restaurants, you can meet the people, you can actually experience the country. And that's what the guys' experience was too. Like, I met with the Foreign Legion there, a bunch of American veterans who were fighting for Ukraine. hung out with them a bunch, and their experience was just very different than what GWAT was like, where they're like, yeah, we after we spend 5 days on the zero line, we go back, we like hang out, get some pizza. Like, whoa, that's a very, very different experience.
Yeah, they
Yeah, no,
contribute
like
whatever.
that.
Yeah,
The little bit of an allied experience from back in the day.
yeah,
In some of the campaigns, you know, World War I, World War II, you know, very much like that, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
you know you're up forward, and then you're not, and then it's just life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what was some of your inspiration there? I mean, I like some of the guys that I know you've met, at least Sebastian, but like guys like, you know, rest in peace, Tim Hetherington, you know, Sebastian Younger, like some of these guys, you know, I I wouldn't put them as, well, Hetherington for sure as a journalist, but like they were storytellers. Like they were there to like capture the human condition, and like that was their motivation. And then obviously their motivation became like, you know, they became part of that human condition, and they wanted to really tell that story. What's some of your motivation for some of the stuff that you've done, and then what you're looking to accomplish with the new Cappy Army?
A little bit of what I try to bring to it is, I mean, I'm inspired by guys like Hunter S. Thompson, dudes
Oh,
that like to kind of show you a story through their eyes and through their perspective. Because I feel like there's so many great reporters already crushing it and doing an amazing job showcasing what's happening on a lot of different fronts. And my approach, I try to kind of not insert myself into the story, but be a framing device for how to understand this story, how to look at Ukraine through the lens of someone like myself who experienced Iraq, like how to look at it through that interpretation. I try to kind of put as much of my personal thoughts onto it instead of just show it and let it be. I like to explain what sort of the experience was like for me, because I think then hopefully it could help people kind of like feel it vicariously through that. So like a lot of times during the Ukraine videos, um, I would try to, and I don't love, I'm getting more comfortable with it doing like putting myself on camera in these situations. But yeah, that's the approach that I'm taking. And with Cappy Army, what I want to do even more, and that's part of the reason why I put my name into the channel, is because I wanted to feel a little bit more of a personal approach.
yeah. It's we definitely got personal. One thing I thought was interesting. I was checking out your. We don't have it, but it's the same handle, Cappy Army. I think up on Twitter or X. Is you have one piece up there that and maybe you could highlight on this a little bit. You talk about that you guys had gotten intel that the Russians knew that the Ukrainians possibly had a reporter, a Western reporter with them, or journalist. Was that? Did you feel like that was that leaked one to them for that reason, or and or do you feel like that possibly saved your lives? Do you think the Russians held back because they thought maybe, you know, someone from ABC News or something or whatever, just that a journalist in general was in that vehicle?
The Russians are targeting press over there. To be honest, I feel like the Ukrainians are also targeting press, and so I took off the press, like the big press text from my. I wore black so that the Ukrainians could identify where I was, but I didn't try to be showcasing who I was, mainly because, as a lot of people know, Kursk, which is now back in Russian control, when Ukraine was occupying that sliver, that bit of it, um, Russia was prosecuting journalists who were going there. So they were basically opening up international criminal cases against any journalist that went across the border. And so the SBU in Ukraine, it's like their version of the FBI, where they warned me. They were like, okay, you can go to Kursk, but like you probably don't ever want to go to Turkey or Venezuela or Uzbekistan again, because there's a pretty good chance that you could get arrested and extradited to Russia. And I kind of felt like, I'm like, what I'm going to, let them intimidate me and not go and not see what's happening and not, just report on what's happening just because there's some intimidation tactic. And so I decided to go anyway, come what may, the consequences. And even just the way I got permission to go to Kursk, to go to the Russian occupied or Ukrainian occupied area was crazy, because I was having drinks with some guys that turned out to be in Ukrainian intelligence in Kyiv, and we were just getting annihilated, like just straight smashed. And my fixer
was SCADA brief you should have paid attention to.
So I am like, I wanted to get out of Kyiv right away, but my fixer was like, no, we should hang out here. You should make some connections. Turned out to be a very good idea, because it led to me meeting this guy who knew the person that could get me permission to go into Kursk. And they're like, you know what? We like you. We'll get you access to Kursk. I thought they were full of shit, but it turned out to be real when they were like, okay, you got to be at the truck at 0 whatever hour. And then it felt real. And then I'm like, what have I agreed to? And yeah, Kursk, when it came over, so the truck that I was in there was actually an armored truck, which was a little bit nice, and it was being operated by Ukrainian intelligence guys. And so they had the read on their radio of like, they got a message that Russia was aware that there was a Western journalist there and that they were going to be targeting us. So it shortened our timeline for our mission. We had to leave a little bit sooner than we originally were planning to. But it wasn't so much that, from my understanding, from what the fixer told me, it wasn't like somebody told the Russians I was there. It was like there was a OPSEC error where somebody posted into a chat that they weren't supposed to. They use, I guess I'm not supposed to say what app they use, but they use like an app.
Signal, were they?
It's the recent snap. The recent snafu could have learned something from this error. So they posted the information in the wrong chat, and I think out of an abundance of caution, they then called the mission.
Okay, I thought it when I read it. So I'm glad you explained it, because I took it as, oh, the Russians know that, because I think in the picture I had to go back and look. I think you're kind of smiling. I thought, but you're kind of like, Russians know a journalist is here. Like, we're good. I'm the umbrella of protection. It sounds like just the opposite. You were the big red blinking light for them to aim for.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That definitely unnerving. Yeah. So what? You went over there. How long were you over there in Ukraine?
For 2 weeks. And it was just nonstop. It was, I would sleep in the vehicle while we would drive. We drove the entire front line in those 2 weeks and stopped at different points, except for Kherson. But the rest of it, we did basically around the horn and saw the different conditions in each place.
I thought you were there for a month or two. Holy,
it felt like that.
What was the most disappointing part of that experience, and what was the most inspiring part of that?
The most inspiring was a lot of the guys that I talked to. So when I went to Iraq, like, I had this idea that I was super about the war is the right thing to do. We should go. Like, this is the right war. Then when I got there, it's not like I was like type of person to throw my medals away or some shit. Like, I felt as though it's far more complicated than I originally thought when I was 19. And then when I was going to Ukraine, I was worried that I might have a similar experience where I've felt as though Ukraine is a very like worthwhile country to be protecting from Russia. I was worried, like, I'm going to go there and then find out that all these people are really corrupt and that they're that the situation is just a shit show and that they have no discipline and that they have no command structure. I was worried that that might be the case, but it was inspiring to find out that that's not the case, that they are very well trained, very disciplined, and motivated by almost universally people, even the dudes that were shit talking and saying that they want the war to end and that they don't want to be fighting anymore and they want to desert. They're still saying, they're like, at the end of the day, even those dudes that I talked to in Ukraine were saying, fuck Russia. This is our country and it's worth dying for. So that to me was inspiring to see that they really do want to keep their country. They really do feel like if Russia takes over all of Ukraine, they're dead anyway, and that they're going to be pressed into service to fight against the West anyway. So why wait for that to happen? The most disappointing thing a little bit was, and I guess this isn't disappointing or shouldn't be a surprise, but we all remember how dudes were stop lost left and right for Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, it's almost like that type of situation, but 10 times worse. People pressed into service and then, or people who signed contracts and then are now kept in service 10 years after they're supposed to be out. Like, that's disappointing. You see martial law in effect in what looks like a European country, but it's just locked down as far as there's a checkpoint every couple of kilometers where they're checking your ID and making sure you're not a deserter. War is disappointing. It's there was some difficult things to see. The medical evacuation, seeing the guys that the day I was there wasn't as bad as it normally is. There was people that had been blinded by a drone attack, but normally they were showing me the pictures of like what the 152 Russian artillery rounds do to the body, and it's, I mean, yeah, ugly stuff.
I think it's interesting that thing that you just said, because I think in North America, I'll say, let me preface it as that we're being told the story of like the romantic war, the evil oppressor, coming into the country. It's all bad, genocide. But what we're not hearing is the internal conduct, right? So you're talking about they're not looking for like the enemy. They were looking for deserters. And, these stories that people are, kind of whispering about, like the forced service, like not conscription, not like inspired service, but like servitude.
I mean, I've heard stories in the last month or so of them, and I don't know, again, how true or false, but of people witnessing them just dragging men and boys out of houses and throwing them.
There's videos dragging them out of cars.
Yeah.
At checkpoints and stuff.
Right. And then that wasn't like they were in a deserting. They're just haven't signed up yet or something. I don't know, or whatever it was.
The checkpoints are also there for trying to capture or trying to find Russian saboteurs. They're there for a number of different reasons.
But the fact that they're there also for deserters, very telling. Very telling.
I think so. I think people shouldn't have like a fake, whether you support the Ukrainian cause or not. I don't think it serves anyone's interest to like pretend that a situation isn't what it is. It's better to be honest about what sort of the realities are on the ground. And they're a country that's 4 times smaller than Russia. Like, they're in full martial law from their perspective to save their country's sovereignty, their existence. So the sacrifices that they have to make to exist as a country, if they want to exist as a country, are very difficult. And Vietnam War tons of deserters, tons of Americans that didn't want to fight. And now I think humans are humans no matter where they are. Like you don't want to die an ugly, awful death. There's a lot of Russians that are the same way, that are early in the war try to escape conscription. And can you really like blame any of these people for that? No, I don't think so. And yeah, there's a lot of Western media that try to sweep some of that under the rug or ignore it. I don't think that does a service, because if anything, it shows how bad the situation is for them. I mean, they're losing territory across the front. They're on defense. Everyone that I talk to there, the soldiers are saying this. They're like, we need help. We're losing, and this won't be in America's interest if we do. What people think about that or not is up for debate.
That's a great point, or a question that I have now off what you just said, is why do you think they believe it's important to us? Like
their argument for why it's in America's interest to invest in Ukraine is because if Ukraine were to fall completely and Russia, let's say, takes over all of Ukraine, that would force the European or American security alliance to spend even more money and resources on protecting that new front, which from Russia's point of view is exactly why they didn't want NATO or any Americans training in Ukraine.
Right.
It's sort of a what do you call it? Between a rock and a hard place. Like, what do you do? If I'm Russia, I don't want, like, we know the American CIA was in Ukraine, building bases there, training Ukrainian intelligence agents to assassinate. They didn't want them to assassinate Russians, but of course that's what they did, because Russia's their enemy. And so what would you do if you're Russia? Like, I almost feel like everyone did exactly what you would expect them to do. And people operate under the incentive structure that you create. And since the end of World War II, we created the perfect system where Russia's incentivized to try to take over Ukraine. And Ukraine obviously doesn't want that. They want to be with Europe and the West, because that's how, oh my God, like, they'll be so much more prosperous if they're allied with America and the West than if they're under Russia's thumb. I would say almost inarguably. But if you're Russia, of course people are probably going to be pissed at me for saying this, but like, what did you expect them to do? Like,
it was theirs not too long ago.
Yeah. And,
well,
and I mean, I can see what you're saying on the front, because if they take all Ukraine, they push up against the NATO wall, right? And Ukraine obviously wants to be in NATO, because you can be as corrupt as you want to be and still be in NATO and be afforded those protections. And, that's why they've been such a big proponent of not allowing Ukraine into NATO, because that would move the NATO wall closer, right up to Russia's border. And it just ripe for conflict. And just because everyone's gonna pull out that the Article 5, right? You go, oh, you attacked a NATO country, we all attack you, right? And either the countries do it or they back off, and then the whole world goes, wow, this whole NATO thing's a whole bunch of BS.
I mean, if you look at history of what the United States does when any foreign power messes around anywhere near our territory, like, we usually aren't happy about it. So, I mean, I think this thing should have been prevented decades ago, and it's a tragedy that no one was able to stop it from happening.
I mean, it's funny you say that, because it was prevented decades ago. It was prevented when, a guy by the name of Ronald Reagan agreed, to like come to a compromise with the Soviet Union, which allowed Ukraine to kind of strike out on its own as long as we didn't interfere. Like,
And then when they gave up their nukes, we promised them we would always be there to protect them.
right.
And
we're like,
didn't happen.
but without letting them join NATO.
Right.
Like,
Now, I got one thing I want to jump into, real quick topic. As you were talking, Cappy, it made me think, right? As we've looked back over the last of wars in general, I think we can all agree that when this country has gone to war, the U.S., we come out of there with a lot of innovation, right? And what we've seen out of GWAT, we saw it when I was Desert Storm, right? We came out of there. We finally got the chance to test the peacetime Army weapons and billion-dollar programs that we built in the 70s and 80s to say, wow, this whole, we did a phenomenal job, and look at this multifaceted, war system of, we got to test out Patriot missiles. We got to test out, the M1 Abrams on the battlefield and how it could hit, Russian tanks away from far off, and all that great stuff. We get in the GWAT, especially after Somalia, and even I could count some of that, right? We really made huge advances in medical, right? Really, the military's always helped advance our medical capabilities, right? And the things when we got pushed out there, whether they were remote FOBs in Iraq or, small ETT teams like I was on in Afghanistan, we were just with a whole bunch of Afghans, we were generating new ways to save lives. And while we have a lot more people surviving, just maybe a lot more missing limbs, but they're not bleeding out. One thing when I look at what's happened in Ukraine, but all those are a direct reflection of the big war machine, the defense industry base, and all that stuff generating stuff. I spent a couple of years contracting to one of the Army's R&D labs, and I worked in a group that specifically was grabbing off-the-shelf technologies, and we were getting it into Iraq and Afghanistan to help. A lot of sensors, electronics, and stuff people have seen. But I look at the Ukraine war, and it's literally changed the face of war through off-the-shelf technology. We saw the original, someone bought a drone on Amazon, they had a little hook on it, it dropped a grenade, like everyone thought, look how innovative that is. Now, I mean, you were with drone guys, you could tell us firsthand. I mean, I've watched a lot of Div Civ videos and stuff like that. I mean, what they've done in drone technology, still there's to do with the AK in the back of a truck, but what they've done with off-the-shelf technology and capabilities in this war of the last few years, to me, has blown past the speed of innovation, has blown past anything I've seen before when it's been the defense industrial base trying to come up with something. And I'm just interested on your take on that, seeing it firsthand.
I think it'll be very interesting to see how much these drones are a function of, have we just not come up with the defensive capabilities quite yet to catch up? Because the drones, proliferation of small drones definitely had a head start in terms of like the sword versus the shield. It's possible that the United States comes up with some really good jamming device, and then drones aren't as big of a deal as they were. That the question is the next fight that America gets into, how relevant will those drones be? It'll depend on our counter. They're basically, the military is investing in counter drone technologies. They got like 30 millimeter auto cannons with airburst munitions that automatically target these things. So, I mean, I hope that it's not just a big drone game in the future, and that that's not what warfare looks like. But it's a frustrating part of war. Like by the time you hear these things, these FPV like drones, by the time you hear it, it's too late. I got to hang out in meet a bunch of their trainers, and the guys just would take out their phone and they're like flipping through their videos and phone the way like I have photos of like my family and stuff. They've just got kill videos, just endless videos that they recorded of them killing dudes with their drones. And they say they've killed hundreds of people, each of these guys. And yeah, drones friggin' suck.
Sounds like firsthand. Yeah,
and the range, right? Like,
yeah,
I call them they're like IEDs with wings. Could you imagine how different Iraq and Afghanistan would have been if I'm assuming they would have easily been able to get a bunch of those FPV
Well,
drones.
ISIS were really the precursor. Like ISIS success in northern Iraq and Syria was based off of drones, right? So, or unmanned. And so they were like they were ahead of the game there. They were also, the remote control V-beds. And ISIS really got into unmanned, and really kind of took it to a different level.
I didn't know that.
I shouldn't be giving them credit, but they did. They were really innovative about it.
Like
and
in
that
2011, around then.
And later, and that's like going into 16. Like that's one of the reasons, we had to change how we fought them, and and it was, and that's why it was a little more specialized in 16 and 17, right? So.
Well, you're giving someone you don't need a big smart, multi-million-dollar smart bomb off of a fast mover. You need someone with a joystick and a PlayStation controller, and they've got a smart bomb. It may not be the biggest one in the world, but if it kills you, it's big enough.
And like the range, I was it 2 weeks ago, they sent some up into Moscow. I mean, it's really impressive on both on all sides, but it's also scary as shit, because I think one of the scariest videos I think I've ever seen, it's I think it's a Russian guy, actually. It's a Russian soldier hiding on the front lines, and the drone's overhead. You can just hear it, zzz, and like they don't know if what they're hiding under is sufficient enough cover. Now that they got thermal imaging, like they're just like, it's this unfair advantage. But that's warfare, right? You find the unfair advantage and you exploit it. And like, but just seeing that guy's face, and just seeing sheer terror, like it just, and because like you said, it's just impending death.
And isn't it kind of, it's pretty screwed up that like, I think
Well,
it's
both sides
sort of,
happen, so
it's
like,
messed up to me that, I obviously there's no way around this, but like can't be anonymous anymore. You get killed in Ukraine or in Russia, like your face is all over the internet now. Like your death, people are commenting and laughing and like joking about your death. So messed up, so awful. I'm like, am I gonna end up just people commenting like, ha ha ha, look, he couldn't get over, you know what I mean? Like little, it's another level of messed up that I wouldn't have ever imagined, because the level of even just resolution, you can see these people's faces clearly. So it's so terrible.
Well, the keyboard warriors, right? The bloggers, the social media blog, that those mediums allowed you to be as brave as you want to be. And what you're describing, in my opinion, is those same capabilities and mediums strips away any humanity you want to act like that you have, right? Because you don't have to face them. They can comment like, oh, look at that dude, he got smoked and all that stuff. It may be one thing for a combat veteran to have say something like that, but for a normal everyday civilian who hasn't really experienced the horrors of war, to sit there and say it so lightheartedly without any degree of have any degree of consciousness of humanity is pretty scary. We see stories where kids do, unfortunately, a school shooting or mass shooting, and they always like to blame. And how many times that way back in the day it was the music, now it's the video games, right? But there's validity to that, because
absolutely,
right, you desensitize them to just like gunning down everyone in some version of Call of Duty, and they don't have any they don't put any reality to that when they walk into a movie theater or school.
Well, that was like ISIS's. That's what gave them so much success in recruiting, was that first person video, right? Like, and be it from the drones, be it from the remote control V beds, be it from like GoPro on a dude, like that first person shooter, that first person perspective, like that, it is the same as a video game. And so like, it was a huge recruiting tool. And we sat here, behind the power curve on that, because we're like, well, too busy making recruiting videos of another kind. But
I mean,
You're right. Sorry,
Hamas
go ahead.
was doing it on October 7th, right? How many cameras we got off of dead Hamas guys? They all had GoPros. They were videoing that for a narrative.
absolutely.
It's a very powerful perspective because it puts you right in their shoes, makes you feel like you're there, makes you imagine that you could be there and that you could be doing those things. Very powerful recruiting tool. You're right.
Yeah.
And you're right. U.S. way behind it. I look at combat footage a bunch. I do like a reaction show to combat footage and to like show the real realities of war. And as I noticed, there's not a ton of combat footage of U.S. forces, not a ton of GoPro footage out there. But that would have made a much greater recruiting video for sure.
OPSEC, man. Like,
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Sure.
Don't think we don't record everything, because we do. But like,
True.
I think we manage a lot better. That was part of the issue with the guys. Was that third group in Africa, or was that fifth group?
Yeah.
The ones that got killed in Niger.
Niger.
Yeah.
Right, because they filmed it. Both sides filmed it, and they got our footage off some of our bodies, right?
Yeah.
Now,
I think that was the time. I could be wrong.
No,
that was Niger.
Yeah.
You're spot on. Now, I know we got a few minutes left and going for a while, but I want to ask you. You've been on the Unsub podcast, very popular. 4 or 5 guys usually, some very popular ones, some Fat Electrician, sometimes, a couple other big comedians and bloggers out there. Sergeant High, who's been on here, who's been on our show, goes by Angry Cops. I mean, a lot of folks on there. You bring, now some of those guys are vets and stuff like that, but have you brought in, like, is your play been on that? Do they talk to you about that? Because they talk a lot of military stuff on there. Have they talked with you about that? What it's like you've seen not only in Iraq, but also Ukraine?
Are you asking, have I spoken to them about Ukraine?
Yeah, on that podcast and stuff.
The time that I went on was right before I went to Ukraine, and I'm actually going to be going back on in next week or April 12th. Probably come out by the end of this month. We're definitely going to be talking about. We'll definitely be talking about Ukraine then, and we'll be going over probably the cartels as well. I look forward to talking to them about that. Yeah.
All right. Now, do you have the comedic talents too? I mean, those are some pretty funny guys on there. Are you a jokester? We just haven't seen it yet.
You put a couple of rippets in me, and I slam a couple of drinks, and I definitely lose the analyst side of myself and go back to old Private E2 Cappy.
Are you spiking rippets?
Last time I was there, because I was nervous. I'm like, these guys are so like funny. Like these guys are funny and they're smart. Yeah. And I'm like, I did feel like way outclassed. So I just kept slamming rippets. I brought them with me and I like gave it to a bunch of them. And I tried to put one in the back of the shelf because I love rippets when I was there. It's like, to me, it's a bit of nostalgia. Yeah. And then I also put a bunch of the
Bitburger beer with you too. Some Bitburger non-alcoholic beer with you.
No. That I will never. I remember one of my buddies when I was over there. He's like, "Here, you want one?" I'm like, "I don't. What's the point?" And he's like, "It's It's just like a nostalgia of drinking it. I could never get into those near beers.
I mean, I got into them.
Yeah.
Well, we may or may not have had a brewmeister on my team that. The rest of the other people on the FOB, what few Americans were there, always thought he was so nice to keep refilling our beers for us and go getting us another one out of his room, with no idea that all he was doing was using that igloo cooler that the final batch was in and just refilling our near beer cans.
One of the fine NCOs that I put in charge of, helping me buy guns and shit up in Kurdistan always came back with what he called near beer, but I'm pretty sure it was near 5.0%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Cap, we've covered a lot tonight. We're at about an hour, but I'll make sure obviously we've got your channels running up there. You got Cappy Army coming. Anything else that that we haven't talked about that you would like our listeners and viewers to know about? Anything initiative you have coming up, or any nonprofit or any initiative that you are really supportive of, you'd like people to go check out?
Yeah, check out the channels. Every once in a while we do fundraisers on the videos through YouTube. We like to give to UNICEF, for instance. We're looking to, hopefully, now that we have a little more control over how we operate, we'll be able to get more into those kind of things. So if you have a good charity that you know of, please let me know. You can shoot me over a DM, and I'm always answering those. So thank you very much for the time. And it was great talking with you guys. We should chat again if you guys ever want to talk about cartels or anything like that.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
We're not going to wait 5 years next time. We're going to have you on sooner than that. So
Absolutely.
we don't want to do it in every 5-year thing. Toby, did you have anything else you wanted to wrap up before we go?
No. I was going to bring up, because he talked about some of the things that they're going to talk on the April 12th podcast, and then in your video, kind of explaining like the future. When's that drop again? We have the ticker going, so everyone knows it's at Chris Cappy on YouTube. But when's that drop?
That should be the 11th. It should be April 11th, unless something terrible has gone wrong with the production. It should be April 11th, Friday.
That's a week today, right? Oh,
it's right.
Tomorrow, a week from tomorrow, you will, the Cappy Army will go live on YouTube. The channel is launched.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm pumped for you, man. And I'm also pumped for your family bringing another life into this world. Congrats on that, man. Like, that's far more important than a YouTube channel, but equally cool.
Yeah,
definitely. Can't wait to be a father. Very stoked. Very excited.
Love it, man. Love it.
Your first one, right, Chris?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Toby and I can tell you the same thing you've probably heard from everyone else, but you still have to experience, and that is your life will change forever. You won't know how you made it. Yeah. And I'm glad that you're probably going to stay closer to home now. It's definitely a much more important thing now for you. So
exactly.
All right, man. We'll be following you. We'll be looking for that launch on the 11th, and be cross posting. We'll be highlighting your page and reposting it on our stuff, because I know you're going to come out with solid content for sure. And we'll stay in touch. We'll have you back on.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, everybody. You have a good night. Tune in, follow all of our socials, and be sure and follow us not only for this show on Thursdays, but also our Lima Charlie show on Tuesdays. And with that, Rob will take us out of here.